What's going on, 49er faithful, 49er fam, 49er gang? This your boy 49er Dion here, back with another video. So definitely hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, turn on the post notifications so I can keep you up to date on any and everything San Francisco 49ers. With that being said, let's get right on into it. So today's show is more so about our previous drafts. Now, I didn't go all the way back because I wasn't born in those times. I'm only an 80s baby. So what I did was I went back to the Bill Walsh era, basically from the time that we started our Super Bowl runs. And we hired Bill Walsh in 1979. So he was partially the GM of the team. And we had several GMs from Walsh's era all the way up till now, of course, with John Lynch. So what I wanted to do today was just have a little fun and break down the actual draft picks that they had. Now, I'm not familiar with everyone that they drafted, but I can tell some of the significant names that really mean a lot to us that, are true fans of 49er football. I didn't start watching 49er football until about 85. So forgive me if from 79 to 85, I'm not very familiar with a lot. Even as a kid, I didn't really keep up with the draft too much. But as I got older, I went back and did my research to be able to go ahead and make sure that I, educated myself properly on these things. Now, it's not going to be spot on perfect. Jay in the Bay, what's good? This is the way you say it, man. I like how you do that, homie. There was no disrespect intended in that. Glad you came in to view the show, brother. Anytime you ever want to link up and do one, man, I'm saying I'm always with it. Roy boy, what's happening with you, man? And as I was stating, it's just for me to understand, what we went through to be able to get to those Super Bowls. You got to think about it. We had 3 in the 80s and 2 in the 90s. Well, technically all 4 were in the 80s, but you get where I'm going. So basically, it's just that situation for us to be able to go over that and take a look at how our foundation was built. Hey, what's up, Sin? The building blocks of what it took for us to get where we needed to go. Because through the 80s, we were the team to be feared. Nobody wanted to smoke with us. We always had a winning record. We were always continually in the playoffs. And Walsh had a system that revolutionized football with that West Coast offense. So with that being said, man, I'm going to go ahead and pull up some things. And we just going to go ahead and get started. We're going to go all the way back to the Bill Walsh era. So Bill Walsh and John McVay kind of handled a little bit of the duties as far as GM from 1979 all the way up through 1990. So yeah, I think that is a serious, that's a good 11 years worth of, general managers, and then us allowing Bill Walsh to be able to do it. And then at the same time, you got to think about it. Eddie D keeps the money in his pocket because I don't have to hire an extra. Oh yeah, definitely. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I don't have to hire an extra body to be a GM. I can just let Bill do it. He knows what he needs and what he wants and what we need to be able to win. So why not go ahead and allow him to take the reins of this, and just pick the dudes that we feel we need to get? So Bill Walsh drafted a little-known quarterback, which coming out of college, Joe Montana wasn't the best thing smoking. He was good, but he wasn't overly fantastic. But when he came to us, his first couple of years weren't overly. His first year wasn't overly amazing. He was still splitting time with Steve DeBerg. And we all know who that is, but at the same time, you kind of look and you go, 49ers history, it says, Joe Montana, Steve Young, Y.A. Tittle, guys like that. When you think of quarterback, Alex Smith, Colin Kaepernick, currently Jimmy G, in the future Trey Lance, you think of dudes like that. Nobody remembers Tim Rattay or some of the guys that I'm going to name because it's crazy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and jump right into it without further ado. We're going to start with that era. And I've got it pulled up here, so give me just a second to slide down to it. Things will load up. We're going to slide all the way back because we had so many beautiful drafts and so many amazing players that came in them that it'll blow your mind, you know. So starting off, 1979, we didn't have a first-round draft pick, but we had a running back named James Owens. Then we had, of course, the Hall of Famer Joe Montana. He was the third-round pick. We drafted a linebacker named Tom Seaborn, another guy named Jerry Aldridge, and another guy named Reuben Vaughn. Jerry Aldridge was a running back. Reuben Vaughn was a defensive tackle. Phil Francis was another running back. Steve Hamilton was a defensive tackle. And then we drafted the incomparable Dwight Clark, part of the duo, the author of The Catch. We had another DB. We had two DBs after that, Howard Ballage and Billy McBride. So you got to think about it. In that draft already, look at the people that we have. Hey, what's up, Melissa? Look at the people that we automatically had. We had Joe Montana and Dwight Clark. Like, that's immediate right there. Just those two names are, littered in 49er history. We know what they do. We know what they do together. We understand what Joe did for all those years. And that is something, hey, what's going on, Mariah? That is something that's beautiful. We got to have fun with that. You got to love that part right there. So just from looking at it in the beginning, that first draft, it wasn't too bad. You automatically start looking at it and you say to yourself, man, I got two of my, foundational players here with Joe Montana and Dwight Clark. So then you always want to take a look and you always want to analyze what happens and where things go and what truly went on in each of those drafts. So another little known thing that people don't know about us is we had O.J. Simpson. March 24th, 1978, 49ers acquire O.J. Simpson. Bills acquire second and third round picks in the 1978 draft, the first round pick in the 79 draft, and the second and fourth rounders in the 1980 draft. So we gave up some serious capital to go ahead and get O.J. Simpson. Now, contrary to popular belief with the way, hey, what's going on, John B? Contrary to popular belief with the way that people look at O.J. Simpson now, when he was playing football, he was a baller. Y'all didn't look, man. If y'all don't believe me, go look up O.J. Simpson's stats when he was running for the Buffalo Bills. He was no joke. They didn't wind up giving him the nickname the Juice for nothing. We did have O.J. for a small span of time. So when you look at it, Simpson was one of the most talented players in the NFL during his 9 seasons with Buffalo. He was a 6-time Pro Bowler and a 5-time All-Pro. Simpson had 5 straight 1,000-yard seasons, led the league 4 times, and set a record with 2,003 yards in just 14 games in 1973. He ranks second in Bills team history with 10,183 yards and 57 touchdowns. He also led the NFL in scores twice with his hometown 49ers. Simpson totaled 1,053 yards and 4 touchdowns in 2 seasons. His Hall of Fame career was overshadowed by his legal troubles. But basically, we won that draft. We won that trade strictly because all of the other guys that the Bills got with the picks that they had, nobody knows who these dudes are. Don't believe me? I'll go ahead and give you some names. The 2 picks from the draft turned into Florida defensive end Scott Hutchinson and wide receiver Danny Fulton. Hutchinson played 53 games with Buffalo and 16 more with Tampa Bay before retiring in 1983. Fulton had 34 yards in his only season with Buffalo in 1979. 47 more ever 2 seasons after signing with Cleveland. The Bills also received 2 picks in the 79 draft, where they had Ohio State linebacker Tom Cosino, was a hot commodity but never played for Buffalo. And then they drafted the 4th rounder was a guy named Ken Johnson. He had 5.5 sacks in 6 seasons. Another running back, Joe Cribbs. That's what I'm saying. So when you look at it from, didn't O.J. make it to the Hall of Fame? I believe he did, Sin. I believe he did. So when you look at it from that standpoint, we won that trade. We got Dwight Clark, Joe Montana, a host of a few other picks, and then next thing you know, the Bills got nothing. None of these dudes lasted in the NFL. So you could say automatically we won that draft. That's just straight off the rip. So moving on into the 1980 draft, we draft running back Earl Cooper out of Rice with our first round pick. We get a dude named Jim Stuckey, who's a defensive end. We get Keena Turner, linebacker. We get Jim Miller, a punter. Craig, I'm trying to read these. Some of these are small. I'm sorry. Paluki. He is a linebacker. Ricky Churchman, defensive back. David Hodge, linebacker. Ken Times, nose tackle. Herb Williams, defensive back. Bobby Legold, linebacker. Dan Harding, quarterback. Now, none of those names ring a bell to me outside of Keena Turner and Earl Cooper. But, you know what I'm saying, you're not going to hit in every single draft that you have, and not all of your drafts are going to be perfect. So that second draft that they have, we grab a couple of people and a few different guys, but these aren't dudes that really made a serious, crazy impact, you know, while they were there with us, playing with us, because Earl Cooper only had 298 yards, 298 attempts, 1,152 yards, 6 TDs. He had 12 receiving TDs, 213 catches for 1,908 yards. So he seemed to be a dual threat quarterback, which is a part of the West Coast offense, which is what we all know it to be. So with West Coast offense, you need to be a dual threat quarterback. You need to be able to run, catch, and the way that it's evolved with Shanahan and with his father and Kyle himself is you need to be able to block. So what people don't know about Terrell Davis, when he was in Denver, he was a damn good blocker. You know what I mean? He wasn't finna run through that man. And he would hold up and make sure that, you know, John Elway did his thing. Elway didn't get to the Super Bowls by himself. So when you look at it, you go ahead and you say, okay, 1980 draft, all right, not too much, not too shabby. It was all right. You know what I mean? We did what we could as far as that goes. And then the next draft we go to, we're going to slide on over to 1981. This is the year I was born. So the 1981 draft, we draft with our first pick, Hall of Famer, Ronnie Lott. Now, we all know that name. If you're a real 49er fan, and you don't know who Ronnie Lott is, you are not a real 49er fan. We go ahead and draft John Hardy. We draft defensive back Eric Wright. We draft Carlton Williamson, another defensive back. Lynn Thomas, another defensive back. So that's 4 DBs within our first 5 picks. So that's telling me that we weren't comfortable with the defense backs that we had, and we need to go ahead and upgrade. And drafting Ronnie Lott, you know, it definitely was automatically the big thing there. So we go ahead and we draft a running back named Arrington Jones. We draft Pete Kugler. He's a nose tackle. Then we get Gary White, Ronnie DeBose, Major Oglivi, and Joe Adams as a quarterback. So the last few guys are tight end, running back, and quarterback. So out of that draft right there, that tells you we bolstered our defense, so our defensive backs are not going to get beat anymore. We draft one of the greatest defensive backs of all time, who should be in the Hall of Fame and is in the Hall of Fame, Mr. Ronnie Lott. And we go ahead and we make those moves. So once again, these drafts, those drafts in 1980 and 81 are all about fortifying the defense and making sure, you know, that we're ready for anything coming at us. Why? Because this is the year we go ahead and win the Super Bowl. So, next up, when you look at it, 1 second, shift the thing around here. So when you look at it, we go ahead and we get Ronnie Lott and Eric Wright, and those two dudes were staples of our defensive backfield. They made things happen for us. So we shift on over here to the 1982 draft. So our 1982 draft, we draft a name that everyone knows. Draft tackle Bubba Paris. Now, I remember this dude just strictly because of going back and doing my homework on him. So he was definitely a great tackle for us for a very, very long time. Um, we draft Newton Williams, a running back. We draft Vince Williams, another running back. We draft Ron Ferrari, a linebacker. Brian Clark, a quarterback. Uh, Dan McLemore, defensive back. Tim Babian, defensive tackle. Gary Gibson, linebacker. Tim Washington, defensive back. So in that one, outside of Bubba Paris, you don't really know the names of too many of those guys, strictly based on the fact that the other dudes were probably serviceable guys. And they went ahead and made it happen, with what they could contribute to the team. But what you're seeing here, honestly, is a trend. You see that Bill Walsh loves running backs. Same thing with Kyle. The difference between Kyle and Bill is Kyle loves running backs, but he likes undrafted guys. He likes guys that you can just pull off the street and go, I saw what you did in college. Come on in here, man. Let me put you in the system and make you look like a star. Because the zone scheme system that he has just seems to work out perfectly for those dudes. It always works out. Oh, I'm sorry, Mariah. Hey, man, blessings to you and your families. My condolences. Everybody out there in the chat, just, let her know. So, we basically put our arms around you, Mariah, proverbially, and we there with you. You know what I'm saying? We want nothing but peace and love for you and your family during that trying time. We always here for you, outside of the 49er stuff, we're a fam, But getting back to it, we have that draft, so we got Bubba Paris. So we got that tackle. So that solidifies it. That makes sure that part of that line is built, and everything is going in the right direction. So we start looking again. We go to the 1983 draft. The 1983 draft is where we find ourselves. There we go. So we'll slide up. 1983 draft. Here we go. What do we draft again? Another running back. So, with that being said, we draft the incomparable, the man, the myth, the legend. This guy should be in the Hall of Fame. There's no question about it because what he did was ridiculously innovative. If this young man wasn't around, then we wouldn't have the guys that we have out here doing what they do. There would be no dual threat there would be no dual threat running back without the likes of Roger Craig. He was our first pick in the 1983 draft. He was in the second round. Then next after him, we draft Blanchard Montgomery, a linebacker. Tom Holmoe, a defensive back. Ricky Ellison, a linebacker. Gary Moten, another linebacker. Mike Malarkey, tight end. Jeff Morrell, defensive tackle. And we get the man, the myth, the legend, Jesse Sapolo, center, in the 11th round. So you got to remember, when the draft was going, we didn't have always just 7 rounds. We had it was a longer draft. There was a longer process. I had the fortunate chance of meeting Jesse Sapolo via the Shant Club and their podcast. They got a link with him. Nick knows him. He seems to be very good with him. And Jesse's one of the nicest guys, man. He showed us his rings and everything. So having Roger Craig, the running back, that solidified that run game for us. And Jesse Sapolo, this man played all over the line. He played guard, he played wherever you asked him to play. And he played for us for years and years to come. So I am loving that right there. We draft those two dudes and we make, we bring some guys that made 49 history. So you got to think about it. You go ahead, you come to that draft, and you get Roger Craig, you get Jesse Sapolo. So, you can't lose with that. Honestly, you just cannot. There's nothing you can say about that. Those dudes are legends in 49er land, and we love and appreciate them for everything that they did for us. He should be in the Hall of Fame too. Sometimes when you look at these dudes, man, and you look at all of what they accomplished, it becomes a little frustrating because you're like, dang, man, y'all really ain't putting these dudes in the Hall of Fame. Like, what do you have to do to get the information there? To go ahead and get in. So I am going to zoom a little bit because this is a little small, and though my vision is great, I need to make sure I can see it. I actually need to back up a little bit because I put it too big. So give me just 1 second. Let it go back and get right. There we go. That, nope, I don't want that. All right. So we are back, and if this thing will get out of my way, I'll be able to get back to what I was doing. Just go add the close and move. There we go. All right. So 1984. We start with the first round. Todd Shell. And something back in. Jeez. So I leave it the way it was. Some of these things don't like to move. Always got ads on the internet. I want to show you everything under the sun. There we go. All right. So we have Todd Shell, a linebacker. John Frank, tight end. Guy McIntyre, another staple on the 49ers offensive line. You got to love Guy McIntyre. We drive Michael Carter, a nose tackle. Jeff Fuller, a defensive back. Lee Miller, defensive back. Derek Harmon, running back. Dave Moritz, wide receiver. Kirk Pendleton, another wide receiver. So you got to think about it, man. Out of that whole draft, who did we get? Who made sense? Guy McIntyre. Hey, what's going on, 49ers channel? It's definitely a beautiful thing when you continue to solidify your line and build it over the years. Because one thing that happens in football that we all understand and we see, there's a lot of turnover. And people move a lot. Back in the day when you watched football, the team stayed pretty much the same. It was extremely rare that you had dudes going from one place to the other. It wasn't until free agency and everything came around that you saw people actually going ahead and moving place to place. See, back in the day, all our teams were so solid because we didn't have a ridiculous amount of turnover. You have guys like Patrick Willis more recently. You saw him stay with us for his whole career. He never left. But you see a dude like Khalil Mack for the Raiders, who's generational talent. The man has talent beyond talent. Now he's with the Bears. Why? Just because you didn't want to pay him? The money and the numbers and figures have ruined the staple of keeping a team together and keeping it like a family. That's what I loved about having Eddie DeBartolo there, is because he was the dude that kept it like a family. When they tell you they're always Jerry Rice was in a piece on NFL Network, and he said, I'll always be one of Eddie D's boys. And he said, when you talk to this man and when you understand him and you get to know him and you become a staple of that franchise, he knows you, he knows your family, he knows everybody. I'm talking about, he knows your kids, he knows, possibly aunts, maybe even a few cousins. He knows people. He gets to know you. He wants to know you and who you are, what's about your life. And that's some things that miss. And, when it comes to these things, if I was Jed York, I'd organize something for Christmas. Hey, man, bring your kids, bring your family, bring your close people, bring your loved ones. We're going to go ahead and throw something for y'all. I want to get to know you guys. I want y'all to understand that, yes, this is a business, but at the end of the day, I want y'all to know that outside of that, y'all can come to me, y'all can talk to me, we can be cool. Stuff like that. When you build a rapport like that, you got to remember, man, that gives players the option and the mindset to say to themselves, like, hey, look, I'm just going to go ahead and stick with this squad because this is where I want to be. I know I don't want to go nowhere. Why do you think Tom Brady stayed in New England all that time? It wasn't necessarily because, he was liking to take a pay cut, even though he's got 7 rings and he's the most grossly underpaid quarterback that ever played football. You know, it was why? Because he had a relationship with Robert Kraft. He had a relationship with Bill Belichick. Even though Belichick wanted to get rid of him and move on and move forward, that's just his MO. If he sees you on a downward slope where he feels that you're going to start slipping and he has something viable to replace you, you can get up out of here and go ahead and chill out. The only person that he can honestly say that he let go of and it really kind of backfired on him was Chandler Jones, because he's been in Arizona and he's been balling ever since. Outside of him getting injured last year, that man is a destructive person on the defensive line. I can't stand to have him playing against us, but it is what it is. So we're going to go ahead and shift on forward. Right now, we are headed towards 1985. Now, the 85 draft came along with some trade history as well. So the 49ers acquired first and third round picks in 1985. The Patriots acquired first, second, and third round picks in the 1985 draft. Wide receiver was a strong position in the 1985 draft for future Pro Bowlers Al Toon and Eddie Brown. Being selected early, however, the 49ers found all-time great in Jerry Rice, a two-time Division I AA All-American in Mississippi Valley State. His accolades and accomplishments would take up an entire chapter book about NFL history. 13 Pro Bowls, 10 All-Pro selections, two-time Offensive Player of the Year, three-time champion, MVP of Super Bowl 23. After posting 11 receptions and a game record 215 yards against the Bengals, a league leader in yards and touchdowns 6 times each and receptions twice. Holds the NFL record with 1,549 receptions, 22,895 receiving yards, 197 touchdowns, 23,546 all-purpose yards, and 208 total scores. A league record 1,848 yards in 1995, passed by Calvin Johnson in 2012. Member of the 1980s and 1990s All-Decade team. After 16 seasons with the 49ers, Rice signed across the bay with the Oakland Raiders and scored a touchdown in the Raiders' loss to the Buccaneers in Super Bowl, looks like 37. He was traded to the Seahawks during the 2004 season, signed with the Broncos the following year, but retired after failing to make Denver's final roster. After his career ended, the 2010 Pro Football Hall of Famer, co-authored several books, appeared on Dancing with the Stars, and was a two-time Pro Bowl alum captain. Third round pick, Alabama running back Ricky Moore was cut by the 49ers. He played one season with the Bills, Oilers, and Cardinals. The Oilers were the Houston Oilers, and basically they turned into the Tennessee Titans. And the Cardinals, totaling 126 rushing yards, 220 receiving yards, and total 1 touchdown before he retired in 1988. The 1985 draft had some fireworks at the top. The Bills selected Bruce Smith overall. We all know who Bruce Smith is. That man was a national treasure for Buffalo. Then made the trade with the Browns after Bernie Kosar decided to opt out of the regular draft into the supplemental draft. Although two to four were traded, the most influential deal involved the Patriots acquiring an extra second rounder, but dropped 12 spots. New England used 3 picks on Trevor Matches, Ben Thomas, and Audrey McMillan. Now, mind you, the rest of that is a little bit irrelevant. What's happening, Ronnie? Mello, yeah, I can't deal with Ronnie. He always getting on me about being light-skinned. But that's basically it. Like, you got to think about that. This man did so much for us and for our generation as far as the 49ers were concerned. Like, we really went out there and we did that. We balled out, and he helped us. And you got to think about that, man. There are records that man has. I don't know if they're going to ever be broken because you got people so busy worried about their pocketbook and branding themselves and what life is after football. They don't even focus on football like they should. We love Calvin Johnson. That man was a ridiculous football player, but look at him. He's already retired. He didn't even last as long as Rice did. Why? Body was just getting beat up, man. He just got tired. And then, to be honest with you, this is the reason that I'm not afraid of Matt Stafford. When you're not a winner and you don't win and you don't go to the playoffs and you get there, you don't know what to do. It's confusing. Your first time in the playoffs brings a lot of nerves, a lot of confusion, and you're automatically sitting there going, what am I supposed to do with all these bright lights, all these cameras? Why do people ask me all these questions? I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I just want to go into a hole and crawl away and die. Why? Because you're too nervous. You know what I'm saying? So Matthew Stafford, what does he want? Nothing. I don't see anything that he's won. So for me, what I'm saying is, all right, cool. Y'all think Matthew Stafford's going to be the solution over there? We've been beating the Rams since Sean McVay's been there. We'll continue to whoop their ass every year with Matthew Stafford throwing the ball. The only person that changed was Stafford to Goff. Now, is Stafford a better quarterback than Goff? Of course. We all understand that. But I don't think he's going to win because the system's going to be the same. It's going to be the same personnel. So all we got to do is stop those dudes, and we stop Matt Stafford. It is what it is. But moving on rapidly, we're going to jump back into the draft. So let me make this smaller again. I just got to deal with the sizing on it. I think we're going to be good because it's making it a little bit easier for me to be able to move around here. Yeah, bear with me just a moment here. All right, so we had drafted in 1985 Jerry Rice, a running back named Ricky Moore, guard Bruce Collie, Scott Berry as a quarterback, David Wood, a defensive end, and Donald Chumley, another defensive tackle. So you look at that, you see another trend there. It's ridiculous, but Walsh likes quarterbacks, and he loves him some running backs. So this is what happened. And we move on to the 1986 draft. Now, 1986 draft, our first pick, we had Larry Roberts, defensive end. Then we go ahead and we draft Tom Rathman. We all know who Rathman is. 544 carries, 2,020 yards, 26 TDs, 320 receptions, 2,684 yards, and 8 TDs. Rathman had a small stint with us, but he did make a hell of an impact. Then we draft a guy named Tim McKibber, defensive back. We draft the incomparable John Taylor. Basically, there was a Batman and Robin thing, and it was Jerry Rice and John Taylor. And let me tell you something, defenses hated to see that coming because people don't understand that John Taylor was such a ridiculously great guy, and he was a really good dude, and we just put him into our 49ers Hall of Fame. So we love John Taylor. Hey, what's happening, Matt? We love John Taylor. And we appreciate him for everything he contributed to the 49ers organization. And we know that without him, there wouldn't have been a lot of Jerry Rice because why? He was such a vital part of that offense. And that's what people don't realize. The offense that we run still, even in that time, had wide receivers blocking. Had guys going up and saying, I step outside of my normal job to be able to make sure that I put the team first. So think about that. We get Tom Rathman, we get John Taylor, and then right after we draft John Taylor, we get the Hall of Famer, defensive end, Charles Haley. And this man played for us and he played for the Cowboys. Charles Haley was a defensive nightmare. People don't know that he was really, really crazy. And it was just a great thing to have him on our squad. We go ahead and draft Steve Wallace. He's a tackle. Kevin Fagan, defensive end. Pat Miller, linebacker. Don Griffin, defensive back. Jim Pop, tight end. Tony Cherry, running back. We've got Elliston Stinson, wide receiver. And we got Harold Hallman, linebacker. So that was the rest of that draft. But the guys that really made a big deal there were Rathman, John Taylor, and having Charles Haley there. So that's just basically one of the things that you'll see as far as that is concerned. You know, we definitely had that right there, and those dudes were going crazy. So give me just a second. Let me make sure this thing don't die on me. Right. All right, guys. So sorry about that, but gotta make sure that the laptop don't die. That way the show don't stop. What's happening, John? But let's see here. Back to that draft. So basically, here we are all the way to 1986. We get Tom Rathman, we get John Taylor, we go ahead, we get Charles Haley. So next up, we go back into the trade history. So revamping the roster in 1986, San Francisco made 5 trades involving picks in 1985. In the 1985 draft and another during training camp 1986 to help stock a roster that would eventually dominate the NFL. And basically, 1985, 49ers acquire a 6th-round pick in the 1986 NFL Draft. The Jets acquired tackle Billy Shields. 49ers used that 6th-round pick on Don Griffin, a cornerback from Middle Tennessee State. Griffin played his first 8 seasons with San Francisco, winning 2 titles, earning all rookie honors with 3 interceptions, and a career-high 72 tackles. In 1986, he also appeared in 3 other NFC Championship games with San Francisco, playing in 5 title games in a 6-year span from 1988 to 1993. Overall, Griffin played 114 games with the 49ers, totaling 22 interceptions, 8 fumble recoveries, and 338 tackles. He joined the Browns in 1994, played 2 seasons with Cleveland and 1 with Philadelphia before retiring in 1996. And Shields was the starting left tackle for quarterback Dan Fouts in San Diego's Air Coryell offense in the 1970s and 80s. Played 127 games and appeared in 2 AFC Championship games. Although Griffin was a 6th-round pick, he was a starter in 2 straight Super Bowl victories, while Shields played just 3 games in New York. So you got to think about that, man. We went ahead and made the trade, and we won that trade. Again, basically, we go ahead and we give up what we feel is just another guy, and we get a great guy. 49ers in April 29, 1986, acquired 2nd and 3rd round picks in the 1986 draft. Bills acquired a 1st-round pick in the 1986 draft and a 10th-round selection in 87. While the 49ers traded away the 2nd-round pick, San Francisco used their 3rd rounder on Tom Rathman, a Nebraska product whose primary goal was to block for fellow Cornhusker Roger Craig. Rathman won 2 titles, totaling 1,902 yards and 26 touchdowns rushing, as well as 249 catches, 2,490 yards, and 8 scores receiving. He retired after spending 1 season with the Raiders in 1994. Rathman became a running backs coach in the NFL, spent 14 years with the 49ers. He currently holds the same position with the Colts. So you got to think about that. The Bills used their acquired pick on Will Wolford, a tackle from Vanderbilt. Wolford earned 2 Pro Bowl selections in 7 seasons with the Bills. After he was there, he was there with their first few Super Bowl appearances. The unfortunate streak of 4, where they went 4 times and lost 4 times. That's a very, very sad thing to do when you wind up having to deal with that. But the assessment, Rathman was a hard-nosed fullback, decided who excelled at blocking, rushing, and receiving, while Wolford was a solid protective Jim Kelly's blindside. San Francisco won 2 straight Super Bowls, while Buffalo played in 3 in a row with Wolford on the team. But we look again, and we have more. So, the 49ers acquired 2nd and 3rd round picks in the 1986 draft. Lions acquired a 2nd round pick in the 1986 draft. San Francisco drafted Larry Roberts, a former Alabama defensive end, in the 2nd round. Roberts totaled 28 sacks in 8 seasons with San Francisco. 2-time champion, also appeared in 12 playoff games, had a sack in the 55-10 win over the Broncos in Super Bowl 24. The other pick was sent to the Rams in a deal which will be explored later on this list. Detroit moved this to trade up 10 spots to draft Gary James, a running back from LSU, who only played 3 years. So you look at that, we went ahead and got a dude who helped us win a couple of Super Bowls and get a couple of sacks, and got a running back who did much of nothing. So this next part, 49ers acquired a 3rd round pick in the 1986 draft and a 2nd round selection in 1987. The Eagles get quarterback Matt Cavanaugh. No one knows that name. Nobody cares what that name is. The 1986 third round pick became Tim McKyer, cornerback from the University of Texas at Arlington. McKyer made the all-rookie team after posting 6 interceptions, 52 tackles in 1986. He totaled 16 interceptions, the 138 stops, and 2 titles in 4 years with San Francisco. McKyer became a journeyman after leaving the 49ers, spending the next 8 seasons with 7 teams. He ended his career in 1997 after retiring after he recovered a fumble in the Broncos' 31-24 victory over the Packers in Super Bowl 32. San Francisco used a 1987 third rounder on Jeff Bregel, a 2-time All-American at USC. Bregel won 2 championships with the Niners, but he played just 21 games 3 seasons after retiring in 1989. And Kavanaugh, he didn't do much. He was basically Joe Montana's backup for 3 years, and he only threw a few passes, and he didn't really get a chance to go anywhere or do anything. So you see what I'm saying? The 49ers are winning in these trades. They're killing people because they're continually asking for everything, and then the next thing you know, the guys that they're giving up are just people that don't pan out. There's another part to the 1986 trade. This is ridiculous, crazy, man. So 49ers acquired Jeff Kemp, quarterback, plus 2 fourth-round picks in the 1986 draft. The Rams acquired a third-round pick. The trade brought Jeff Kemp, brought the 49ers rights to Jeff Kemp, as well as picks that became Steve Wallace and Charles Haley. So we wind up getting Haley out of that, and we become, better as a defense. Kemp wasn't really a factor. That's basically what it was. Wallace was a solid blindside protector for Joe Montana for more than a decade. And Charles Haley was a pass rusher who had more than 100 career sacks and won 5 titles. So Millen lost his rookie season due to injury, and that's basically what it is. Like, when you look at that, man, that's ridiculously crazy. And then it looks like there's more to this. The 49ers acquired running back, kick returner Joe Cribbs. The Bills acquired a third-round pick. Cribbs was an Auburn product, and he formed a powerful backfield combination with future NFL running backs William Andrew and James Brooks. Cribbs was taken by Buffalo in the second round in 1980. He was a member of the All-Rookie team after setting career highs with 1,185 yards and 11 touchdowns in 5 years with the Bills. Cribbs totaled 4,445 yards and 21 touchdowns rushing and 1,783 yards and 15 scores receiving after the third 1,000-yard rushing season and a third Pro Bowl selection in 1983. Cribbs signed with the Birmingham Stallions of the upstart USFL. And basically, we wound up picking him up. He did a little bit for us, but nothing crazy. So that was another part of that draft and some of the things that happened. So in 1986, we went out there moving and shaking and making moves and just getting guys to go ahead and give us whatever we wanted. And we were giving them third, second, and fourth round picks and just basically making moves and doing what we need to do. And remember, this is Bill Walsh and John McVay. That's basically the guys that are at the helm controlling these things, basically helping us out and making sure. And I believe John McVay is the grandfather to Sean McVay, the current head coach of the Los Angeles Rams. So you got to think about it, man. We've been doing some big things from day one for a very long time. But we're going to go ahead and keep it moving and shaking, trying to get into it as far as that stuff is concerned. And give me 1 second. It's loading here. All right. So we are now in the 1987 draft. So in 1987, we draft with our first round pick Harris Barton, a tackle from North Carolina. And we draft Terrence Flagler, a running back from Clemson. We get Jeff Bregel, of course, that's who we talked about just a second ago, a guard out of USC. Paul Jokic, wide receiver. Bob White, linebacker. Steve DeLine, kicker. David Grayson, a linebacker. Jonathan Shelley, defensive back John Pay, quarterback, and Calvin Nicholas, a wide receiver. Not many of those names I really remember. Not dudes that I think are very prominent as far as 49 history goes. We can take a look because we did have a few trades in the 87 draft. So April 24th, 1987, the 49ers acquired Steve Young. Buccaneers acquired second and fourth round picks in the 1987 draft. 1 year after stocking their roster, the 49ers found a backup to all-pro quarterback Joe Montana. Steve Young was a two-time WAC Offensive Player of the Year, as well as an All-American and Heisman Trophy runner-up to Nebraska running back and future Oilers star Mike Rozier. Young was slated to be the top pick in the 1984 NFL Draft, but instead of going to the Bengals, he entered the USFL and he entered the USFL League draft and signed a then record 10-year, $40 million contract after the Los Angeles Express took him in the 11th overall. Rozier was taken first by Pittsburgh Maulers. However, the team's owners were found to have misrepresented their wealth, forcing the USFL to step in and make sure that the team remained in operation. Young demanded the league find a new owner for the Express, or he would buy out his contract and go to the NFL. The league suspended team operations, and Young went through on his promise, signing with the Buccaneers, who had selected him first in a supplemental draft of CFL and USFL players in 1984. Young went from a financially bankrupt organization to a franchise that had no idea how to win. The Buccaneers won just 4 games in his 2 seasons. He had a 3-16 record, along with 11 touchdowns, 21 interceptions in Tampa Bay. Young became expendable after the Buccaneers took University of Miami quarterback Vinny Testaverde with the first pick in the 1987 draft. After the trade, he filled in sparingly for Montana over the next 4 years, compiling a 7-3 record and winning 2 titles with the 49ers. Young took over after Montana suffered an elbow injury in 1991 and became a full-time starter the following year. He went to the Pro Bowl from every year from 1992 to 1998 and was named to 3 All-Pro teams and earned an NFL MVP awards in 1992 and 1994. He was also Offensive Player of the Year in 92. Young led the league in completion percentage 5 times, touchdowns 4 times. He also led San Francisco to a title victory in Super Bowl 39 and won game MVP honors with a 325-yard, 6-touchdown performance. Overall, Young ranked second in team history with 221 touchdown passes and third with 29,907 yards. He's also tied for fifth in franchise history with 37 rushing scores and ninth with 3,581 yards. Young and the 49ers were eliminated from the playoffs by Brett Favre and the Packers in each of the 3 years following the Super Bowl win. The quarterback was plagued by concussions later in his career and retired after the 1999 season. Young became the first left-handed quarterback in the Hall of Fame when he was inducted in 2005. He's been involved with ESPN NFL coverage since 2001. So Tampa Bay got some guy named Winston Moss. And Moss was a University of Miami linebacker, only had 10.5 sacks in 4 seasons, signed with the Raiders. Then he signed and played his final 3 seasons with Seattle, ending his career with 20.5 sacks. And he went into coaching, with his longest tenure being 5 years as a linebackers coach with the Saints from 2001 to 2005. He was the head coach and general manager of the XFL's Los Angeles Wildcats in 2020. So basically, with the 4th pick, they got a guy named Bruce Hill, wide receiver from ASU. Spent 5 years in Tampa Bay, 2,942 yards, 23 touchdowns, and that's about it. So basically, when you look at that Young went through a lot, a whole lot, and it's actually a little crazy to even think that he had to go through all that, man. And you got to think about it. Being drafted, going to the USFL, doing all of these things, like that's a whole lot to be able to take on. I mean, or if I'm good. Sure. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and move on forward real quick. I am already in. Sorry, this thing is loading a little bit slower than anticipated. Work with you here. RIP to my Wi-Fi. Hey man, that goes down. I'm trying to get the rest getting a little bit. The next draft we were at 87. We go to 1988. We get Danny Stubbs, Pierce Holt. We get Bill Romanowski. Then we get Ken Bryant, Larry Clark Lee, Chet Brooks, George Merritt Jr. So name out of that I remember is Bill Romanowski. He was definitely one of the main pieces of the defense, and we definitely liked that guy, man. He was. I got it, man. Calm down, man. It happens, bro. I can't stop the Wi-Fi, man. It comes, it goes. Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. But I'm back. I'm good. I should be all right. No, and I will not. That's not something I'm looking to address at this point. I'm gonna leave that man alone. That's his personal business. Let him and his family go ahead and get things together and do what they need to do. But I will not talk about that. I don't feel it's my part of my job to speak on that. Just strictly based on the fact that I saw the video, and a lot of this stuff, man, is just it's being let out when it's strictly based on the fact that he's a celebrity to an extent. You know what I mean? And they want to make an example out of him. And I'm not about to put no smut on that man's name or say anything negative about him. All I do know is the positive thing is he has been released from jail. Whatever help he needs to get, I hope he gets it. And that's all I have to say about that. I don't want to talk about that because that's not my thing. We did go ahead and we got Bill Romanowski in that draft, and he definitely went on to play for a while. He wound up retiring, looks like, for 2003. Next up, 1989. We keep on moving forward. So in the 89 draft, we go ahead and draft Keith Long, linebacker, Wesley Walsh, tight end, Keith Henderson, running back, Michael Barber, wide receiver, Johnny Jackson, defensive back, Steve Hendrickson, linebacker, and Rudy Harmon, linebacker, Andy Sinclair, Jim Bell, Norm McGee, and Antonio Gross. Now, out of all those guys, I do remember Keith Long. He was there for a small span of time. He didn't play long. The one that played mostly was Wesley Walsh. Looks like he wound up retiring in 2003. But everybody else on that list didn't even play very long. Henderson only lasted till 95. One of the guys only lasted till 1993. So that draft wasn't really spectacular in 1989. Didn't really yield us a lot of tangible dividends because we really already had a solid stacked squad. Next year in 1990, we go ahead and we get Dexter Carter in the first round, running back. Dennis Brown, defensive end. And then we draft the man, the myth, the legend, Eric Davis, defensive back. In 1990, we go ahead and we get Ron Lewis, wide receiver. Dean Calgary, a guard. Frank Pollock, a tackle. Dwight Pickens, wide receiver. Odell Higgins, a nose tackle. Martin Harrison, a defensive end, and Anthony Shelton, a defensive back. So, not really anything crazy there, but we did go ahead and get Eric Davis. Davis retired in 2002, but that was the man. He helped us win our Super Bowl in the 90s, and he definitely was a force to be reckoned with in the league. Next up, we go to 1991. And let's see where we at. Because I believe that is the end of the Bill Walsh and John McVay era. So when you look at it from the time frames from 1990, so basically Walsh went ahead and drafted Joe Montana, Dwight Clark, Ronnie Lott, Eric Wright, Jesse Cipollo, Roger Craig, Guy McIntyre, Jerry Rice, Tom Rathman, John Taylor, Charles Haley, Bill Romanowski, Eric Davis. He drafted a wealth of talent to be able to keep this team going and rolling, even after they wound up letting him go, and we wound up hiring, I believe it was Erickson. So the next guy on the list would be Carmen Policy. He was our GM from 1991 to 1997. But I'm going to go ahead and end it there. I'll come back with another video. Hopefully we can get some guests on to be able to move forward with this. So we'll go from 1991, shift into the 2000s, jump into 2020. I've already taken up an hour of your time. I do appreciate everybody for coming in and watching. Mariah, she did go ahead and give us a bit of information. I'm trying to get this to show up here, man. Where'd it go? There she is. Come on now. This thing is acting up. Basically, Mariah said, Ginn just announced his retirement. Wonder who else will retire this year. There's a bunch of guys out there still just floating around. Ted Ginn announcing his retirement. That's cool. He was a good receiver while he was there. He was more so known for his speed. There we go. Came up finally. Sorry, it took a while. My internet is definitely tripping. But I'm going to go ahead and end it there. I'll be back with another video for us to go ahead and take a look at things. You guys have yourselves a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for coming and tuning in to the peace.